Welcome back to the Bets for Golf DFS show here at betsforsgolf.com. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, joined today, first up of the trio, none other than the host of the Back Nine Bets podcast. You also may know him as the Model Maniac on Twitter. It is the great Byron Lindeque. Byron, I haven't talked to you since vacation. How's everything going?
Oh, it's going very well. Thanks, John, for asking. And what a great introduction. I like you on vacation a lot more. You know, the introductions just get better and more hyped up. So please take as many vacations as you please.
I prefer when you don't go on vacation because that means it's draft season for me and I am busy up to my eyeballs and can't make it on my show with my friends. So here we are. Let's go ahead and, as we know, introduce Splits himself, PGA Splits 101, the great Ron Kloss. Ron, how are you doing?
Doing well. Good week at the Wells Fargo. Finally hit another winner with Wyndham Clark at 100 to 1. Most people who took him, I think, kind of got in at 60 to 75 in that range. But again, that's one of the benefits of getting in our member Discord. I'm in there every Monday morning, bright and early. Kind of jumped on that 100 as soon as it dropped. Couldn't believe it, actually, just because he had been playing so well. And yeah, it only stayed at 100 for maybe about 30 minutes and then started to drop to 75 and then 60. So yeah, good times last week. And again, this is an interesting event with Byron Nelson. Again, not the best field, but again, always a chance to make money. So looking forward to it.
Not only Monday morning, but you have office hours for questions about DFS betting on Wednesday afternoons in the Discord too, right?
Yeah, me and Ryan Noonan and Andy Molitor will all be in there together. So, yeah, answering any questions. So, again, if you're a member, you can put your questions in the Discord and we'll answer anything and everything.
Well, let's go ahead and jump right into it because before we have a major in place next week, we are headed back to Texas for the Byron Nelson. And I think when I was going through your course preview, Ron, one of the most interesting sentences I found is that historically, this course is the least sticky, TPC Craig Ranch, the least predictive out of all courses on tour. So go ahead and get into that a bit and what makes it such a tough course to predict from year to year.
Yeah, I think the big reason for that is just because there's only been 2 events here. So that's kind of probably the overall theme, you know, as courses get more play. You know, through the course of, you know, the PGA Tour season year after year, they're going to get more history. And so I think people are it's still kind of, you know, people are getting used to it. Also, it probably doesn't help that it's just a very simple, bland course. You know, there's not much architecture to speak of. And kind of typically these easy scoring courses like TPC Craig Ranch that pose very little threat off the tee. You know, it's kind of transformed into a target practice on approach. And then that always generally leads to a putting contest. And so this was the 3rd easiest course on the tour for the past 2 years. You know, so for this week, for me, you know, you have kind of these wide open fairways. The rough is non-penal. Greens are huge. So you're going to see a lot of scoring. You know, KH Lee won here. Both years it's been here, 25 under, 26 under. So birdie or better percentage is going to be key. 36% of approaches are from 200 plus yards. So kind of similar to even Wells Fargo, Mexico the week before. You know, proximity from 200 plus yards is going to be key. We've got one less par 3 this year. It's a par 71 course. I'm sorry, one less par 5. They trying to make it tougher by going to a par 71. But par 5 scoring is still going to be key because you can eagle or obviously birdie those 3 par 5s and kind of get an edge on the field. And so for me, another big kind of, I'll conclude with this, kind of a new word this week for me is called weak easies. So you have a very weak field this week and you combine that with an easy scoring course. And so one of the big things I look at is what do players do in the past on similar courses where you have weak fields and easy scoring conditions. And so, you know, these kind of birdie fest events, I think, are very predictive as far as who typically plays well here year after year.
Byron, Ron has already mentioned a lot about the course, including long irons, striking being prioritized for us. But what else are you prioritizing for lineups here at TPC Craig Ranch?
Yeah, I love how Ron says, please ask both of us so we can give our different tidbits and then goes and rattles off every single thing that I would be talking about. But I'll try and just add one little bit more and say 5 to 15 feet on bent grass greens, I think is going to be pretty key this week. You know, we've seen these greens have these like backstops at the back of them. So these balls are going to be funneling into areas where you're going to have very makeable birdie opportunities. You know, for a course that has this many long irons to play this under par, the greens have to be playing their role in that. So I think from 5 to 15 feet on bent grass greens is going to be key for me this week, along with good shot rates from those distances Ron mentioned. 200 plus to 150 plus is about 70% of shots come from 150 and out. So, it's really important to have your long to medium irons dialed this week.
I also think there's a little bit of volatility, Ron, because again, as you mentioned in your course preview, that yes, the rough has been lengthened to 2 3/4 inches, which would usually be penalizing. But at the same time, course superintendent James Osborne noted that the spring that Texas has had has actually led to that Bermuda rough breaking. And so we aren't sure yet if rough is going to be penalizing or if it's something that maybe people overweight, take too much into account given this news and development with the Texas spring. So just something to keep in mind as we go along. And as we jump into the salaries, I want to start at the top because the fact that Jordan Spieth has withdrawn from injury has now created a tier of its own and a conversation of its own around Scottie Scheffler at the top at 11-9 on DraftKings. 1,800 more now than the next closest golfer, Tyrrell Hatton, at 10-1. And so, Byron, before Ron steals all the stats, I'll let you start with what you were doing with Scottie Scheffler, who in a weak field is arguably an easy selection.
He is an easy selection, but we're back in the same boat again where we're sitting with $11,900 price tag, right? And that leaves you with $7,620 left for your next 5 guys. Luckily enough, me and Ron have chatted already about the 7K range being quite luxurious in a field like this. The pricing is not too terrible to afford ourselves some 7K players that we're going to probably need a lot of this week if you're going to roster Scottie Scheffler at roughly 35% owned. I've seen ownership numbers from 30 to 40% on this guy. So depending on what contest you go into, you're going to have to play a lot of Scottie. And then I think you can't not. He's easily the best player in this field by a landslide. So I don't really have much bad to say about him outside of the fact of his price.
I have a few 7 and 6K golfers starred as well that I'm looking forward to hopefully getting underweight compared to the field. But Ron, what are your thoughts on just the conversation, the DFS ownership conversation around 11-9 Scheffler?
Yeah, obviously you can't go wrong playing him. I mean, just his consistency this year, I think he's just taken it to another level. I mean, when you look at his last 12 events, he's finished in the top 15 every single time. So like if he has a bad week, like he's finishing, still in that upper tier on the leaderboard. And so, I think people have brought up his putting issues that kind of pop up every now and then. And of course, that is kind of really the only thing you can point to that, if he's just missing, 8-footers and 10-footers and, he's consistently in position. But it's just a matter of if he even hits half of those, he could run away with this thing. So, for me, I think you have 2 different paths to success this week. Now, he is expensive, and you could have made the argument that he could be, 12-5 very easily. But I think you can play him and then kind of mix and match kind of in that 7K range. Because, if you play him, you're looking at about 7,600 as your average with your last 5 guys. I think you can also, just because of how expensive he is, you can start with, say, a Tom Kim, and you can kind of get a little more win equity in the other parts of your lineup. And I think you can still have success that way. So I think there's 2 different ways you could approach it. But, for me, when you're looking, 30 to 40% owned right now, perhaps even higher, when people realize that, Spieth is out and, do I really want to play Tyrrell Hatton? Do I want to play Hideki, who's coming off an injury? So it's just different strategies how you look at it this week.
And of course, if we're then going to roll the conversation into, okay, different strategy, we're avoiding 11-9 Scheffler. Let's go ahead and begin. And I'll start with you, Ron, since you already mentioned KH Lee, for example. But the list goes on. Hatton, 10-1. Hideki Matsuyama, 9-8. Tom Kim, 9-6. Jason Day, 9-4. Day, who did miss the cut at Wells Fargo, but before that had been a top 40 finish in every tournament since January. Adam Scott has been on a tear, hasn't missed a cut all this calendar year. Siwoo Kim, Matt Kuchar. There are many options here to stack instead if you go that route. So go ahead and get us started there, Ron.
Yeah, so I'm changing up my my strategy that I've talked about pretty consistently on this show over the past, couple months, where I kind of take a stronger stand down low and kind of just play everybody up top just because there's so many good options. And this week is just different for me because this group on top, you look at these 4 guys, especially Tyrrell Hatton, Jason Day, Matsuyama, and Adam Scott. Okay, so when we're looking at these weak field, easy scoring events, like I mentioned earlier, I just think it's very hard for these elite players to change their mindset and their style of play. The Hattons and the Scotts of the world rarely play these events, where you have a guy like Taylor Montgomery and other kind of mid-tier golfers. They play in these low-scoring weak fields, maybe half the time, if not more. So even a guy like Tyrrell Hatton, he's only played in 4 of these similar events, these weak, easy events in his entire career on the PGA Tour. So, when it gets to a situation like this where, 25 under, now the weather is the X factor. Okay. So we'll get to that later. But when it could go that low for me, Adam Scott is a fade for me, 100%. Not playing him in a single lineup this week. Hideki, same thing. I'm not even gonna take that chance because I view Hideki. And again, the PGA Championship is next week. He wants to be healthy for next week, and so, I think I see him kind of as kind of just using this week to practice. So if I'm going anywhere else up top, I think Tyrrell Hatton is so hot right now. I think he's playing so well that I'm going to have some pieces of him. And Jason Day, the withdrawal concern for me is back just with the vertigo concerns that he's experiencing. So, I might have a little bit of Day, but for me, Tom Kim is the guy here. His ball speed and his distance gains, when you look at how much he's increasing his yardage off the tee, he was at 310 yards average off the tee last week at the Wells Fargo. He's second in approach in my model, which again is key this week. Very streaky putter. And if you look at the 2 events that he's won last year, okay, the Wyndham and the Shriners, what do we have? Again, 2 weak field, easy scoring events. And so I think it sets up perfect for Tom Kim this week, and I'm going to be way overweight on him.
I go away for 2 weeks, Byron, and I come back to Ron having hard stances, finally come out and saying, I'm not playing these guys. I love it. Byron, follow that up. Your favorite players in this range to get started, whether you begin your lineups with Scheffler or not.
Jason Day is going to be my guy. I don't mind Adam Scott, Siwoo, and Matt Kuchar. If I'm going to be trying to sneak in a 9K guy with Scheffler or just starting with them, those are going to be my dudes. Tyrrell Hatton, Hideki, and Tom Kim all rank outside 128th in putting from 5 to 15 feet on bent grass. Now, I know putting is a very volatile stat, but from 5 to 15 feet, that's a very predictive metric on the putting side of things. So I'm going to be leaning on that a lot, especially with the ownership really pooling to those 3 guys. I'm going to be out on them and take my chances on Jason Day, Adam Scott, Siwoo, and Matt Kuchar in this area. Matt Kuchar, obviously a fantastic Texas guy. He just loves to play good golf in Texas for some reason, plays really good golf. I think he finished 3rd at the Valero and is just played great around here before too. Siwoo Kim, also great ball striking on that front. And then Adam Scott's kind of just popped a little bit over the last little while. And I'm kind of willing to take my chances on there because, once you get past KH Lee, Adam Siwoo and Matt Kuchar all leverage opportunities in this 9K range.
I will let you lead off the 8K range, Byron, beginning with Seamus Power. We have Matt McNeely there, Taylor Montgomery, Bian, Tom Hoagie, of course, Minwoo Lee, Aaron Wise returns. Ryan Noonan has talked about him on the betting show. If you want to catch that aired earlier this week. Lots of names to begin. So go ahead and start us out here.
Yeah. Ron, do you have anything to add about Siwoo, though? I can see that twinkle in your eye.
Yeah, so for me, I forgot to mention him. I think this is a perfect week to actually play him. I think he's a really high upside play. If you were to ask me, obviously, I think you know the answer, Byron. Who has a higher upside, Siwoo or Matt Kuchar? So who would you say?
In Texas, I would say it's a toss-up, but I'll give you the answer you're looking for and say Siwoo. Sure.
So I just think what I'm trying to get at here is there's very little trouble off the tee, and everybody knows about Siwoo. He has a tendency to go off the rails and have these blow-ups. If you've seen even Mackenzie Hughes' tweet this morning about all his experiences playing with Siwoo, just all the different ways he tends to get into trouble. and of course the opposite, where he just flashes these rounds of brilliance. And so I just don't think there's many chances for him to go off the rails here because the conditions are so easy. And of course, he is an elite birdie maker. He's the second best in my model in the week easy conditions, 12th best in approach. And so I just have really strong feelings about Siwoo this week at that lower 9K range.
Yeah.
Now, Byron.
Sorry,
8Ks.
John.
No, you're good. I want to hear it all.
Yeah, 8K range. Sign me up for Maverick McNeely, one of the best putters in the field. Would it be a BetSperts DFS show without mentioning Seamus Power in my lineups? Got to go there, especially after he popped there again for the Wells Fargo. He's been kind of off the boil lately since the Masters, and we've been rostering him. But now I think when you see him pop, he typically goes on these little runs where he just absolutely crushes T20s for a while. So I love myself some Seamus Power this week. Taylor Montgomery also, $8,700, one of the most elite birdie makers in the field, one of the greatest putters on tour. Now he struggles a little bit on bent grass. We'll see what happens there from 5 to 15 feet. But at this ownership, I'm willing to take a gamble on him there. And then Aaron Wise, $8,300. He's going to give you some serious ownership leverage. His metrics grayed out really badly. But if you take a look at how he got there with those numbers, it was the final few holes of every single round where he would just have a quad or a triple and just hit his ball into the water multiple times, just doing like boneheaded stuff that really required his mental break to be needed. I think that's why he just couldn't handle those final few holes for some reason. So hopefully he's come back with renewed vigor, and he's a really good golfer, makes a lot of birdies, is a great putter, really low price for his quality of play. And I think he's going to be a great leverage opportunity at this kind of ownership. You don't have to have that much of him to get involved. So really like him a lot.
And before I kick it to you, Ron, I don't know what his ownership is showing. I think it's probably around 10 to 12%, if I had to guess right now on Wednesday. But I also like Tom Hoge quite a bit. Like for the same reason Scotty Scheffler, last 36 rounds, is number one in this field in both strokes gained on approach and birdie or better rate. Hoge is literally second in strokes gained on approach and birdie or better rate in this field, in those two categories as well. So it's almost like he's not as top heavy, obviously, as Scheffler, but if the putting comes around, and I know it hasn't been great the past month, but if the putting comes around, he seems like someone who could get hot in this field too. So you go ahead and discuss the 8K range.
Yeah, I got three guys here that I really love. And yeah, talking about ownership, I'm really just surprised at when you look at all these guys in the 8K range compared to the, 9K and above. Just I'm looking at, anywhere between, 5 to 12% on a lot of these guys. And so I'll go with Seamus Power again. Same with Byron. We agree. I love him. He's kind of in the same bucket as Taylor Montgomery for me. He thrives in week easies. He's first in the model, the very best player. I mean, when you look at what he's done on these types of courses and these fields, he was fifth at the RSM, third at Mayakoba. He won Bermuda. He's had his struggles lately, but he showed signs of life at the Wells Fargo last week, finishing 18th. He loves this course, obviously. He's finished in the top 17 here both years. Dropping down, I will blindly play Taylor Montgomery on this type of course in this weak field. So again, when you look at these putting contest type layouts, that result in a birding fest, he was 5th at the Amex, 12th at Sony, 15th at the RSM, 10th at Mayakoba. Kind of the list goes on and on. So he's played in 8 of these in his career, and he hasn't finished worse than 15th in any of them. So, everybody knows struggling on approach. But again, I just think for some reason, and we'll see if he kind of reverts back to his form from earlier. But at 8,700, weaker field, coming in at somewhere between 6 to 11% ownership right now. I love Montgomery this week. And then, yeah, just like you, John, we'll always go back to Tom Hoge. I think he's the biggest misprice on the board here. He's still sitting at 50 to 1 betting odds. I got him at 60. He has actual win equity. Obviously, he won at Pebble Beach, and, we can't go back to that forever. But since then, he's got 7 top 10s in the past year. He's the best approach putter in this field. And I kind of take a look at when we talk about putting contests, you combine approach, strokes gained approach plus strokes gained putting, and kind of come up with a ranking for that as well. And so he's the 7th best player in this field in approach plus putting. He spikes on bent grass. That's his favorite surface. Mm-hmm. And again, very similar to some of these other players, there's very little trouble off the tee here. And so that's one of his weaknesses. His other big weakness is around the green game. And, there's very little emphasis here on around the green play, especially a ball striker like him. So I just think it fits him so perfectly. And so I'll be heavily overweight on Power, Montgomery, and Tom Hoge.
One, I did not realize Hoagie was 50-1. I literally just bet it as you were giving your soliloquy. And two, Byron, like I can set my watch to you discussing Seamus Power on this show every week. Usually, you also have something to say about your fellow South African, Christian Bezuidenhout. So anything on him at an even 8K before we move on to the 7K range?
Absolutely. Bezzy out here making the world a better place with the new coach, because since the TPC Sawgrass outing, his iron play has been sensational. I think he's third in the last 24 rounds on approach. He's one of the best putters in the world. We obviously grew up playing a lot of golf on bent grass greens. So, he's a great bent green putter. And this new coach has got his irons swinging really nicely. So at 8K, I think, you're going to see a little bit of ownership there on the 8K range, but he's playing really good golf, John. And I think his irons have always been his bit of like the buffer, the breaks. He's been trying to power through a bad iron play situation, and now he's actually really playing some really nice irons. So we'll see what he can get up to. He played well here last year. I really like his chances.
We teased everyone with a handful of players that we don't mind going overweight on in the 7K range in case we do get up to Scotty Scheffler. And that starts, of course, with Davis Riley, Joseph Bramlett. I know I'll be overweight on. We have Will Gordon, Scott Stallings, Justin Suh. The list goes on. Aaron Rye, Luke List. I mean, we can go on and on. We may even need to separate this between the top half of 7K and bottom half of 7K. Yeah. Ron, though, I want to start with you because I think this is also when the weather starts coming into play. And we talk a little bit about that because right now it seems, at least last time I checked, that the early wave is the favorite since the wind kicks in Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, and Byron will be the first to tell you along with me that it's just so hard to predict exactly, sure, even 24 hours out. But yeah, like you said, John, there's a clear edge to the early wave right now on Thursday. Now, it's not a big edge just because it looks like from about 7 o'clock in the morning to around 10, 11, winds are a little bit on the calmer side. And so, if you can find a handful of guys, and I haven't looked yet exactly who's teeing off very early, but those few groups that are going out early definitely have an edge. Winds do increase in the PM on Thursday. Friday, it's windy all day, but it does kind of subside somewhat in the afternoon. It's dry on Friday, but then Saturday comes and you have more wind pretty much all day on Saturday with looks like the potential for over an inch of rain. Sunday, less wind, but still scattered storms. So, yeah, it looks like an interesting mix of weather this week between wind and rain. And, so that'll be, interesting to see how it plays out. But looking at, like you said, I think we definitely do need to break apart this 7K range. And so, like I was talking to Byron earlier, and, when you actually just look at this range from top to bottom, like I could make a case for literally every player in here. They have just enough upside. They have just enough safety, current form, like however you want to look at it. There's so many guys to choose from here. So I think it is a great week where you can mix and match these guys, even if you just play Scheffler and, 5 guys down here. Davis Riley, I'll start with, another high upside guy. Have kind of inconsistent recently, but he's kind of like a mini Tom Hoge to me. Just so good on approach. Can spike with the putter from time to time. He was 9th here last year. Obviously, he won the Zurich with Hardy. He's got 3 top 20s in his last 6. So, again, I think this is a really good price for him at $7,900. I really love Brandon Wu this week. If I'm looking at kind of my single entry, high dollar lineups, I think Brandon Wu is a great fit just because he finished 3rd in Mexico just 2 weeks ago. And this is another wide open, driver heavy, easy scoring course. If you look at Pebble Beach, where he was the runner up, that was a birdie fest. And I just think Brandon Wu has huge upside. Another great price. Again, he's another guy who I thought for sure would be in the 8K range, sitting there, $7,800. I think a guy like Scott Stallings, who has a 3rd place finish here, 25th place. I think he's got some upside. And then just kind of as we go down a little bit lower, Sam Stevens is a Midwest guy. He already has, and I had to double check this because it just seems like he, just started playing recently on tour, but he already has 4 top 15s on similar kind of wind exposed courses, which TPC Craig Ranch is tree lined, but there's a lot of wide open areas here. He's got 2 top 3s in his last 4 events. And then I'll talk about 2 more guys here. Justin Suh. He's got 14 straight made cuts. I had another thing I had to double check because, you know, he had kind of a reputation for being inconsistent, but like Siwoo Kim, he's just kind of become this consistent player who's not finishing high a lot, but he's just kind of a safe play here. You know, he's 10th when you combine approach and putting. And then Michael Kim, you know, the resurgence with him obviously is real here. He's made 7 straight cuts after kind of a really bad stretch over the last 3-4 years. 2 top 10s, you know, he's gained on approach in 5 of his last 6. And so I think I'm going to continue to ride the wave with him.
Michael Kim is definitely someone who popped for me, and I'll have quite a bit of as well. What about you, Byron, in this range?
Yep, Michael Kim outright for me. Love what he's been up to. You know, gained 8 strokes ball striking at the Wells Fargo. Can't go wrong with that. Justin Suh's an interesting cat. You know, that 14 streak of made cuts is really impressive, but then what's more impressive is how badly he plays once he makes the cut. It's just like a completely different golfer every single time. So potentially if you play round 1, round 2 showdown, Justin Suh's an absolute target for sure. You know, he's going to let you down once the weekend comes, almost inevitably. If you go take a look at his round 3 and round 4 splits, it's ridiculous. So just putting that out there, I do like him from a safety perspective, but don't cry when he sucks over the weekend. So Will Gordon's another guy that I don't mind at $7,800. Talk about just absolutely pounding greens in regulation and making a bunch of birdies for someone in the 7K range. He's right up there in the top 20 in both those departments. Scott Stallings, as John mentioned, Brandon Wu, love those guys. Brandon Wu weighted good shot numbers. So a good shot on the PGA Tour is when you gain over half a stroke on the field on one single shot. Brandon Wu's 4th in the field this year on that metric, which is incredible. So that's why he's been playing really well on these long iron courses. Aaron Rai just doesn't appeal to me as a birdie making machine, but his ball striking numbers over the last 24 rounds have been sensational. I don't know how you can pass up a guy that's inside the top 5 in the field has got Tom Hoagie, Scotty Scheffler, when he's ranked 4th in the field in ball striking. So got to play a little bit of Aaron Rai. Michael Kim, obviously, a little bit more of a risky play. Mackenzie Hughes, also a really good long iron player, can really putt lights out, but hasn't necessarily been playing that well lately. And then a chalkier play that's really good on bent greens is Adam Schenk, who's also been playing really good over the last 24 rounds. He's 12th in recent form and 4th in the field from 5 to 15 feet on bent grass greens putting. So a lot to like from him. And then mix him in with a little Patton Kazai at 2% ownership, which not that popular of a play, but I think he's got some upside too in the putting front and par 5 scoring. A lot to like in this range. Sorry.
A lot to like. And I also like Eric Cole. I was waiting for someone else to mention him. I don't think anyone hit on him, but he's gained strokes on approach in 8 of his last 9 events. The putting has been a little bit all over the place and his play around the green. But again, with these being a top 5 of largest greens on tour, I'm not expecting much scrambling so much as I am just a longer putt. So I'll take a chance on that. As we move on, though, 6K range. Unless Ron, you have something else to say about the lower 7Ks.
I haven't even got started yet.
Go ahead. Do it.
Yeah. So no, Eric Cole, I completely agree, John.
Okay.
I love him this week. You know, he's 5th in the A putt model here. Again, combining those 2 stats together. You know, he was 5th in Mexico on a similar course, runner-up at the Honda. You know, this guy keeps, kind of doing it week after week. You know, he missed a cut last week, but again, that course that, kind of that huge layout at Wells Fargo just didn't fit his game. But again, he comes back here, I think easier conditions. I love him at 7,400 this week. Dylan Wu is another guy who just, him and Michael Kim, the short knockers who, for a while there, I just was not respecting. I just, even in kind of weeks past in Mexico, I was like, these guys aren't going to get it done on this huge course. And, they both finished so high. And so I'm on Dylan Wu for the first time, 6th in approach and putting. He's gaining in every area. Again, the DraftKings still not giving him much respect, 7,400 only. I'll go down to Nate Lashley here, 7,200. So he's another fit here for these wide open off the tee birdie fests. He won in Detroit, very similar course comp. So he's got 24 career finishes in the top 20. 17 of them have been on easy courses, easy scoring courses that are similar to TPC Craig Ranch. So Another guy who just extreme value here at 7,200. His current form is also really good. He's got 3 straight quality finishes. And then I'll just go down one more here. Jimmy Walker, Texas Ranger. Byron had a great graphic on him this week. I think he's another sneaky. I mean, outright, I got him at, I think, 150. I couldn't believe, again, the disrespect there. I mean, this guy has made 4 straight top 25s. One of the biggest things with him is, I think he's kind of getting over his Lyme disease. I don't know for sure if he's completely past it, but, he's 21st in the entire tour in driving distance so far this year. His short game has remained excellent, but he's kind of putting it all together. And so I think Jimmy Walker at 7,100. I think, when you start getting into this low 7K range, and there's more guys I could talk about, like a Vincent Norman, a Davis Thompson, who has a lot of upside. But you could go Scheffler, and you could go with the Tom Hoagie, a Taylor Montgomery as your second guy in, and you could still easily fit, 3-4 of these guys here in the 7K range. So again, a lot of different ways you can attack this week.
Aren't there stats like Ryan Palmer playing better in Texas? Isn't there a stat, Ron, that Charlie Hoffman also plays better in Texas? And yes, I'm trying to convince myself to play 1% Charlie Hoffman, who has been an absolute just disaster off the tee.
Yeah, Ryan Palmer is actually the 3rd best. If you look at strokes gained Texas, which is another thing that if you go to betspursgolf.com, our new database where you can actually search for courses by region. And if you just want to look at Texas, if you want to look at just the Midwest, Ryan Palmer's 3rd on that ranking. He allegedly has the course record here at TPC Craig Ranch, which he is a member. I think he's 63 is his record here. So yeah, Ryan Palmer, I think, people have some of these guys, they see a Ryan Palmer, a Matt Kuchar, these older guys, and you're just really not excited to play them. But I think Ryan Palmer, this is a great week to get him in. And yeah, same for Charlie Hoffman. Charlie's always been great on approach, and he's a guy who's, when he's made the cut, I think going to what Byron said with Justin Suh, he kind of runs out of steam on the weekend. Mm-hmm. But I think, Hoffman at 7,100, as good as he does play in this area, I think he is a decent play.
I've made dumber choices. Byron, what about you in the low 7Ks?
Yeah, I'll rattle off some South Africans. Yeah, I think, on the bent grass greens, you want to play these boys because we don't have that many Bermuda surfaces back home. MJ Duffy, Eric Van Rooyen. MJ, really, really good putting on bent grass greens. And if you take a look at his recent form, it's been pretty solid. He's been rattling off some top 25s as well. Played nicely, made the cut at the Wells Fargo last week. Eric Van Rooyen, really good long iron player. Love what he can get up to. Really explosive golfer. And his ball striking lately has been really impressive. So love what he's up to. Ryan Palmer also, not just a Texas guy right now. I'd be playing him if I was looking at just recent form. His ball striking has been pretty good for someone that's this price and going to a Texas place now. I think you can't go wrong there. And then we'll add Jimmy Walker, obviously a unanimous favorite amongst us all, and would be a great comeback story for him there to win this week. He made it onto the PGA Tour because he was 50th on career money earnings after 16 live guys left. So he made it in on the number and basically he's doing what he's doing now on all of this. So that's a fun little story there. Andrew Novak, my final guy I want to mention, is just playing really, really solid golf. The short game is just sensational and the par 5 scoring is really going to help him on these longer holes. So Andrew Novak at 2%, 7K flat, I don't mind.
When I dig into the 6Ks, I'm hoping y'all can help me out, beginning with you, Ron, because I was struggling to find other values. Kevin Roy stands out. If only being a machine on approach, hasn't lost strokes on approach since January in every tournament he's played. And so that kind of pops at 6,500. But what else to you in the 6Ks? Who else can we get here?
So for me, like you said, I'll just go right with that because Kevin Roy is my favorite play by far.
Good.
I've even got him in, a few of the big dollar lineups just because I'm so convinced at, his performance in Mexico. Like I've said 100 times, very similar to the course here at TPC Craig Ranch, just kind of, long off the tee. He's got sneaky distance. He's been working on his putting, which is the main weakness, and he's seen some improvements there. But yeah, like you said, he's literally a top 10 player on approach, not just in this field, but actually on the entire tour when you look at his numbers. And so I love Kevin Roy. He's a huge salary saver. Like if you just put him in your lineup, even if you just play him at 10%, 12%, you're gonna be able to fit in a lot of those other guys up top. Chesson Hadley, someone I rarely play, but his 2 strengths, approach and putting, when you look at the last 3 months, he's gained 1.1 strokes on the field when you look at just those 2 stat categories. And of course, putting contest, that's what we're going to see this week. So I think Chesson Hadley's a great play, coming in at 2% ownership right now at 6,700. And then Carson Young, who a lot of people do talk about, and he's a guy who, you know, if he gets too high here, which you never want to play someone high who's 6,700, but, you know, miscut last week, even though he still gained overall. You know, he's got 2 top 20s before that. He's very weak around the green. He's strong in every other category. And again, here at TPC Craig Ranch, you can have your struggles around the green. It's not going to affect you as much. So Hadley, Young, and Kevin Roy would be my 3 main guys down here.
Byron, 6Ks?
6Ks. Ryan Gerard. He's shown up on tour. Doesn't have a lot of stats. Made 4 of his last 5 like non-alternate event cuts. So he's playing some really good golf, and he's, I think, got special temporary membership or something along those lines. So he's actually playing really good golf. I think he finished 4th at the Honda Classic. So see what he can get up to at $6,900. Very unnoticed there. Stuart Sink. If I told you someone sees a massive change in putting from 5 to 15 feet on bent grass greens, Stuart Sink is one of those guys. He actually grades out as 27th in putting from 5 to 15 feet on bent and 131st on all other surfaces. So, you know, there's a massive jump there, and that's one of his biggest Achilles. And you can just see Stuart Sink, you know, with the wife on the bag, with his son on the bag, cousin, aunt, uncle, whatever the hell's carrying his clubs. He tends to play some really good golf. So sign me up for some Stuart Sink. Carson Young is also someone that's kind of intriguing to me. He's been playing some really good golf off the tee, very solid ball striking wise. And then just Austin Cook, another dude. I like him here too. His around the green play is pretty solid, but that doesn't matter this much this week. But he's just really, really good on the bent grass greens too. I'll sign up with Kevin Roy as well. Someone I've got a top bet on, I'll mention that at the end of the show, but is Ryan Moore for a top 40. And he doesn't really pop often, but he does it about 25% of the time. He makes the cut, kind of finished inside the top 40, and he's $6,400. So he's going to be really affordable, especially if you've got a few Scotty Scheffler lineups that need someone in there. And then toss in Cody Gribble. Let Gribble dribble into your lineups there for a little bit. What does Cody Gribble do well? Well, his bent putting is fantastic, makes a bunch of birdies, and he's pretty good at pounding greens from these weighted proximities. So he's $6,500 too.
So first of 2 final questions. I think given the context of DFS lineups this week with Scotty Scheffler basically being you either play the best play or you don't, everyone can make that decision for themselves. So Ron, let's start with you. The 3 golfers under 8K that you will roster the most. And for me, it starts with Kevin Roy, Eric Cole, and Dylan Wu. But what about you?
Yeah, so I'll go Davis Riley at 7,900. I'll go Brandon Wu at 7,800. I think both of those have kind of really great upside as far as even, you know, the ability to finish top 10 for sure. And then, you know, since you took Eric Cole, I'll drop down to Nate Lashley.
You can agree as well. It's okay.
Well, I do agree with Eric Cole fully, but I also like Nate Lashley at 7,200. So I just think there's so many guys you could go down here, but those would be my favorites.
And I think it'll be important for everyone to check your ownership projections Wednesday night at Best Sports Golf, because given that we expect Scheffler to be the highest roster golfer in this field, then differentiating your lineup around Scheffler will be most important, will be most crucial for DFS. Byron, what about you? 3 favorite golfers under 8K.
Will Gordon, Michael Kim, and Jimmy Walker. Those are all kind of chalky. So, you know, I'll be leveraging around those guys too, like mini leveraging spots. So like those 3 a lot.
I do like Michael Kim too. And then Byron, your favorite bet for the week.
My favorite bet for the week is Tom Hoagie top 20, plus 210 on FanDuel. So when Tom Hoagie makes cuts, I totally skipped over him when we were talking earlier. When he makes cuts, he only does it at 56% of the time, but he top 10s at a 22% rate. So when he makes them, he's playing really good golf. He's the definition of high risk, high reward. So I've got him as an outright as well, and just love what he can get up to. And then I want to mention the Ryan Moore. Plus 440 on FanDuel for a top 40 for Ryan Moore. He's finished inside the top 40 in 2 of his last 8 starts. Typically does that about 22% of the time on tour. So a little bit of a risky play, but he's a really good iron player, really good putter. I like what he can get up to in Texas.
Ron?
So I did not talk about KH Lee on the show today. Obviously, he's the back-to-back winner here. But for me, I took a top 20 on him at Bet Rivers for plus 138, top 20. I don't expect him to win again just because obviously we just don't see guys win 3 in a row. I think there's only been a handful of guys since World War II who have ever done that. But Casey is starting to peak again. He's got, when you look at the best combination of course history and current form, he was just 8th at the Wells Fargo, 23rd at the Masters. He gains across the board. So I feel that top 20 bet for plus 138 is a pretty safe play.
I never expected to discuss World War II regression, but here we are. Byron, what else do you have for everyone coming out ahead of the Byron Nelson?
Yep, my tournament, the Byron Nelson. Love this event, even though it's a crappy field. But at the Model Maniac, all my rotoballer stuff's out there. Go check it out. I've got, Rainmaker models and all that jazz too. Back 9 bets, obviously, I've got Rainmaker show there and some DFS betting nonsense that I did last night. So all the usual jazz at the Model Maniac on Twitter.
Ron, what about you? The rest of the day, pretty much.
Yeah, so we got the offers hours where you can again ask any question about DFS betting, 4:30 Eastern time on the member Discord, and then so DFS article with kind of up to date DraftKings ownership. I kind of try to take that out early evening just to get the most up to date kind of ownership, and kind of adding weather into that as well, so people can kind of keep track of that. Very important to monitor the weather probably through the night. If you stay up late like I do, just kind of always checking. But yeah, that, and then Discord will have all the other first round leader stuff. All those bets will be posted this evening.
Join the rest of the team in the Discord, and we will all be back together ahead of a major next week. So until then, good luck this week, everyone. And remember, be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you next time.